All right, welcome back to MGD 111. We're going to continue looking at our brush tools here. We're going to look at some different sorts of brush tips that we can use. So again, we have our mural picture open here. I've got my brush selected. I've got a size selected up here, but when I click on this palette here for the size, you've probably noticed these different looking brush type devices down here. I know you've been dying to try them out, but let's just try one. Let's just select one here. Let's take this brush that looks sort of like a fan. It says round, fan, stiff, thin, bristles. Okay, I'm going to click on that. And what's that going to do for me? Well, it shows me, rather than that circle, it shows me what that brush looks like if I were to stab it right onto the canvas there. And it doesn't seem to do much at first because it's making just tiny little dots. But if we move it around, you'll see it starts to create these lines here. Another cool thing about these brushes is it shows you what this brush looks like as it's drawing. Now there are ways, and you'll study this in upper level classes, that we can actually affect how the pressure of this brush works with particular functions that we do. But that's kind of a neat way to use our brushes here. I'm going to just undo all those. So these are all preset, but just like before, we can affect the size of the brush if we want to. We cannot affect the hardness on a lot of these brushes, though. Some of these are just sort of preset. There are ways to, again, set custom presets. That's a little beyond the scope of this particular class, though. There's also markers. Here's a triangular chisel point marker. So it sort of gives you this sort of rough-edged, markery look to it. That's kind of neat. We also have some airbrush ones that give you this sort of loosely sprayed look to it. And again, we can change the size of that to make it, you can see it's just spraying down a bunch of dots here. But the more we spray in a particular area, the more coverage we get. So those are kind of cool. Now, these are not the only brushes we have available. We have several other several other brushes at our disposal. And we can find those under this little gear here. If we click on that, it gives us a whole list of different brush menus that we can work with. I'm not going to click on these right now, because what it's going to do is it's going to get rid of these for now, and it's going to go to these brushes. But we have calligraphy brushes, natural brushes, square brushes, etc. You can experiment with those as much as you want to. Let's go back to this one, though, because there's a couple of really weird artistic ones built in here that are kind of neat, particularly this 112 and this 134. Remember, that's the size, not the name of the brush. If I click on this 112 here and I start brushing, it looks like some sort of weird little eyelash or something. What does it do? Well, it's the grass brush. And hey, check that out. It's drawing this sort of grassy pattern. Now, it's drawing it sort of randomly. Some of these things are curved a little bit more than others. Some are bigger than others. Some are, you'll notice, they're not all exactly the same color. What they're doing is they're taking my foreground color and applying that exact color and various shades of it too. This is what we call a scatter brush, and the cool thing is it doesn't lay down an exact identical pattern every time we use it. So we can actually create some sort of realistic effects with that. Let's get rid of that though and click on the next one. It's a multi-blade grass brush, so we can use that to fill in some grassy areas. And a lot of this has to do with the speed in which we draw, and whether we go over and over something again too. You notice as we continue to cover it, it sort of gets a little bit clogged up. So you want to use this sparsely. Why exactly you want to use this brush? It has pretty limited capacity, but you can see it's a pretty cool tool. If you've ever used Illustrator, they have tons of these brushes, these scatter brushes built in, but it's a pretty funky sort of tool that we can use. By the way, if you look like me, you can always use this to maybe fill in a little bit on the top of your head if somebody takes a picture from behind you. So anyway, those are just some of the settings that we have available for the types of brush. I'm going to go back to here. Another thing, I'm going to go back to a regular brush here too. Let's go back to the 75 point or whatever. Yeah, that's a good size. We have some different modes here under brush too. Normal is what we normally use, and that just gives us a nice predictable brush. Dissolve gives us this sort of decaying spray. And there's several other options under here too. Color burn Looks like it sort of just sears it into the painting, which is kind of a neat effect. I don't use that one very often, but it's you can kind of get a sense of what that's doing there. One other one here that's kind of neat is the let's see, here we go, lighter color. This is kind of neat. It's like it's not really doing much over here, but wait, I got into this darker spot here, and now it's using it. What's going on here? Well, what it does is this will only have the paint show up if it is the lighter color. Notice when I'm in this beige area, it doesn't show, but if I spray it over some other area, it will become visible. So kind of a strange function there. Not one I use a lot, but kind of a neat thing to play with. These modes are all pretty interesting. I'll let you play with these on your own. Again, these are some that you're going to cover in your upper level classes. Just be careful using them. 99.9% of the time you're going to want to use dissolve or normal. The other times you probably want to use dissolve. Very rarely do I use these other ones, but good to know that they're there if you need them. So let's pause here and we will continue looking at our brushes in our next lesson.